Lisa, the next thing that happened is that Joe raised this woman's shirt to examine herself, examine the woman, like her wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Joe raised the shirt, I started weeping in my living room. Now, this is what happened afterwards. I mentioned that I was raped as a child. I knew that it wasn't that because I had healed from that. I had seen and been around women that, you know, had gone through that, and there was never a reaction or response like that ever. So I knew that wasn't it. I had healed from that. I had no idea why I was weeping so much, and I couldn't even open my mouth to even say like what was happening to me. What I did hear God say to me was, you've experienced another version of this. This is that I had wounds like that within myself. And he said to me that what I experienced is when you're asking a man to stop hurting you over and over, and he continues. What that spoke to me was there is such a thing in these unhealthy relationships called relational rape. And I'll call it that because it's real. It's what's done to a woman's soul and spirit that it causes a lot of damage. And it's very similar to what the soul and the spirit of a woman that's been violated goes through. Mm-hmm. That moment, I wept for 5 hours. It was just this thing that I just could not stop crying. I couldn't even finish watching it. As soon as that happened, that I started crying, I hit pause, and I just allowed myself to have that period. From that moment, I drafted an email because he was overseas. He had been sent overseas. He was in the military. I explained the revelation I had gotten and what took place. And at the end, I said, don't ever contact me again. I sent it and I blocked everything. Phone, email, everything. Because there's one thing for you to be in a relationship and it not be healthy and you struggle through it, struggle to get out. Mm-hmm. There's another for me to have gotten that degree and depth of insight on what had happened to me and not choose myself. Mm-hmm. I had to choose me. Forget about walking in the commitment that I made by this man. I had to choose me. I realized that I had so much strength within me that had just been stomped on and not what it was, but it's not that it wasn't there. It was. I just needed to unleash it again. It was my power. I needed to unleash it. Once I did that, it just embarked me on healing from that. And I'll say this is the way he used to manipulate. I knew that I needed to get out of the relationship. We had, I don't know how many conversations about it. And his statements to me were, but why can't you do that by me? And I'll say this to women. It's unrealistic to believe that you can heal by the very thing that's tearing you down. It's not realistic. It's not possible.
Say that again.
It's unrealistic for a woman to believe that they can heal by the very person that's tearing them down.
Yes.
It's completely unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
You can't build yourself up. You can't heal and build yourself up when you have someone by you tearing you down, either by words or actions or whatever it may be. I would explain, and this is where the degree of selfishness and lack of empathy, and with that personality, they're really about themselves in such an ugly way. They don't care about the person by them. That's just the reality of the situation. When he would say that to me, it just, I would look at him and it's just like, wow, this is really about you, isn't it? But I realized then in that revelation, Lisa, that there's no way in heck I was staying there. I didn't even want contact with him at all. And that decision was showing me that I chose myself and it was time to walk in some self-love. It was just time.
Right. Yeah, that is very deep. That's really deep. That's a lot of work that you did to come to that conclusion. With going through that, it's not, and I couldn't understand what you meant when you said the time of when I ended the relationship to the time that I leave. And I think that happens so many times where you left the relationship, but you're still texting, you're still talking. You got to cut the cord. You got to cut the cord in order for you to completely heal as a person, as a woman. You can't do that with somebody. I mean, there's a reason why you left. How are you going to heal with the person that, like you just said, is tearing you down? It's not possible. And you said this, something that I hear so often: why can't you be with me and we can heal together? No, you do your own healing. I'll do my own healing. And if we're at the place that we can be together, then it's meant to be and we can be together. But we got to do our own work. We got to do our own shit. We got to be separate. It can't be done together. And that's something huge that I think people need to understand, because I hear that so many times. Why can't you be with me to do that? You can't. It's not a complete, it's not the best way to heal, because you got to get back to who you are as a woman and as an identity with just you, not thinking about somebody else, not caring about somebody else. It's that you're a human being. You're going to always care about that person. How are you going to do you work when you're still in the same relationship, and he may or may not be doing his work? Because how do you know he's doing his work?
Right.
So I think that's really huge for people to understand. And that was when you just basically cut it off. And that was
Yeah.
it.
Yes, that was it. Never contact again. I'll say I stepped into another phase of solitude. That relationship, I mentioned, changed a lot of relationships around me. One of the things that I realized, and I'm going to say this because it might be very true for anyone listening. When you experience something like this and you have so much pain and that has to be healed in order for you to move on, the answer is not to jump into another relationship. That's not the answer. But the one thing I learned is not everyone can be trusted with that pain. A lot of people don't understand, unless you've been through it, what you've been through. And I had to set some boundaries because the people outside of me were contributing to second wounds. Like they were wounding on top of wounds with some of their actions and what they would say. And it was all because I wasn't responding the way they wanted me to respond. I wasn't handling it the way they wanted me to handle it. And I learned a very valuable lesson, is that not everyone can be trusted with your pain. So I embarked on another time of solitude. How did I get through that? 2 community groups in Facebook that focus just on narcissistic abuse. And I read a book that's called Narcissistic Lovers that transformed my life. I learned a lot in that book. It's not an easy read. It's going to make you look in the mirror in many, many ways. But the one thing I learned, because I sat again and I'm like, what was it about me that hasn't gotten dealt with that I sat for as long as I did in this relationship? Okay, not running, that's all great. Not giving up on something, that's all great. And I applied all those lessons and I seen that. I wasn't cutting a man down with my words. So how I wanted to carry myself as a woman was happening. I seen the fruit of all I did in my 30s. But even in spite of that, what was it about me that I didn't deal with that contribute to me staying in that relationship? And love is not the answer. Mm-hmm. So I realized that I was raised by one and I had no idea.